In this recording, I want to try to explain how we will be assessing the course according to the assessment forms for 3 different student learning outcomes that have already been submitted. Each form refers to a different student learning outcome. As you can see, this is the first student learning outcome, number 1. Students will be able to identify the steps to avoid academic probation. And it details the method of assessment. The students write an essay scored against a rubric explaining correctly the steps that a student should take to avoid academic probation. Then, after this exam is administered, you will be asked to submit the data, and we hope that at least 80% of students in your sections will earn a score of at least 70 as scored against the rubric. But of course, it's okay if that is not the case. This is not an assessment of you as an instructor. It's an assessment of the course, and that's all. So if we look at the rubric, that's linked here. And the rubric, of course, is on the website of the course. It explains exactly to the student what the student needs to do to score a grade of 90 to 100. And this shows you what you need to teach them in advance. You need to be able to teach them that achieving a GPA appropriate to the semester, the number of credit hours they've accumulated, is vital. And you'll also have to detail the 2 steps for avoiding college suspension once on probation. Information on financial aid is necessary for a 90 to 100 answer, so you'll have to give them that in advance of the essay, obviously. And then the rubric also talks about what they will do to achieve lower grades, but this is the one to focus on when you decide how to teach this subject, and also when the student decides how to approach the assignment. So that is SLO 1. Let's take a look at the other SLOs. Let's look at SLO 2. Now, SLO 2 is based on a plan that we've just put into place. You can see the date submitted July 18th, 2016. So this is really new. We achieved the second learning outcome last year, so we've chosen a different learning outcome to assess this year. Students will be able to explain the various ways in which both the scientific community and the media are guilty of having viewed Henrietta and her family as abstractions. So, as you know, in spring 2017, and of course you'll be teaching in the fall, all students will write an essay scored against a rubric identifying 3 ways the scientific community and the media are guilty of having viewed Henrietta and her family as abstractions, the consequences of that view, and the different perspective of Rebecca Skloot, the author. Now, in week 10, you'll go over the rubric to the students in class, which specifies what the students need to do to score an 89 or higher. It also talks about how many examples should be about the media and how many examples should be about the scientists. And then the students will also be reminded of the requirement in the last 2 sentences of that part of the rubric, identifying the requirements for a grade of 89 or above. That specifies how many, it specifies that the consequences of viewing someone as an abstraction is what, and it also specifies Rebecca Skloot's way of avoiding that stance of viewing people as an abstraction. Now, during week 10, you should ask students for correct answers to these questions in class. If they don't give any correct answers, well, they don't. You don't give them the correct answers, even if they can't come up with them themselves. But if any students identify or identifies correct answers in class 10, the instructor will confirm to the entire class the correctness of said answers. The exam will be administered as an in-class exam for the entire class session of class 12. It must be administered as an in-class exam, not as an out-of-class exam. And here you see the performance target is that at least 60% of students in all sections of SGSC 1000 will score an 89 or higher on the essay. Again, if your sections fail to reach this target, that's okay, but we need to know what the percentage is. So I'll be asking you for that data after you administer this essay. Now, although it says spring 2016, we will do a sample assessment with the same target in fall 2016 because we have a much larger population of students in the fall, and we want to do a sample run. So that's why you're being told this information. All right, now let's take a look at learning outcome number 3. And that will show up here. All right. Learning outcome number 3 is listed right here. Students will be able to identify the differences between the math requirements for STEM and non-STEM majors. Students are to complete a quiz on math requirements for STEM and non-STEM majors. This quiz is loaded in your Georgia View site, and you will time release this quiz for the students to take it at the appropriate time. The quiz requires them to know the correct math learning support and gateway math courses for STEM and non-STEM majors. There's a copy of the quiz that you can click on and see it. If you want to compare what's on your Georgia View site so you know you got the right quiz, you can simply look at this copy of the quiz, and I will provide you these forms so you can, electronic copies of these forms, so you can get to this quiz. The quiz is right here, and you can make sure that the quiz you release to the students is the quiz that has these questions. All right. The target is that at least 70% of students in 5 sections of the SGSC 1000 course are able to achieve a score of 80 or higher on the exam. Now, we did not achieve this learning outcome, so we have to make some changes in the fall, which are specified here. Let's take a look at what those changes are. Notice that only 2 of 9 students completed the exam in Douglas. That's only 22%. Only 39% achieved it in Waycross. But we have a goal of 70%, so we're way off there. So we identified a problem. A serious problem encountered was that students in large percentages simply did not complete the exam in the first place. They had to complete the exam out of class, and many did not bother doing so because the grade was only worth 5% of their grade. Only 17% of Douglas students and 29% of Waycross students even completed it. Of course, 70% is a very high bar. So here's how we're going to close the loop. Students in all sections of the course in fall 2016 will complete the essay in class under proctored supervision. The exam will be worth 10% of the student's grade, not 5%. So we'll make sure that that percentage value is raised. By administering the exam in class next semester and weighting its grade value higher, a much larger percentage of students will not only complete the essay, but will achieve or nearly achieve the target, or at least we hope so. A Camtasia video detailing the differences between the math requirements for STEM and non-STEM majors will be added for students to watch as many times as needed until they master the distinctions between each. Finally, a survey will be administered to students 2 weeks prior to taking the exam to see if students believe they had a firm grasp on these differences. If less than 70% answer in the affirmative, time will be devoted to elucidating the differences in the class period prior to the class in which the exam is administered. So you'll have to print out copies of the exam, enough copies for students to take the exam. So these are some major changes, and you will see them reflected in the structure of the website. So those are the 3 learning outcomes and how we will make changes to our curriculum and to our teaching of the class in order to achieve them in fall of 2016.